Greetings and welcome to Converging Streams, Interfaith Fellowship in Our Modern World. Our program is a production of the Muncie Interfaith Fellowship and the Unitarian Universalist Church of Muncie. Today's topic is the virtue of interfaith worship. Please welcome in studio Reverend Thomas Perchlik of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Muncie and from the Chautauqua Institution in New York, Reverend George Wolfe.
Greetings and welcome to Converging Streams. I have the great joy of being on location here at Chautauqua Institution in Chautauqua, New York. It is located on the beautiful Chautauqua Lake near Jamestown. And I don't know if people know of Chautauqua Institution. It's quite a famous place, but if you hadn't heard of it, it is a real interdisciplinary environment that we have here. A great deal of interest in theology and religion, but there's also the arts. There's a wonderful professional orchestra and a student orchestra. There's a ballet program. And we have guest speakers that come in and talk about issues related to world politics every day. So it's a very exciting place to be, very stimulating, both on the level of the intellect and on the level of the heart. Each religious denomination within the Christian tradition has a house here. I'm staying in the Disciples' House. That is the house that's associated with the denomination Disciples of Christ. But, of course, every denomination has a particular residence, including the Unitarian Church, as well as the Roman Catholic and so forth. And each week we have services every day at 9:15, interdenominational services. On the Protestant tradition, there is a Catholic Mass every day at 12:15. On the weekends, there are two Jewish services. In the afternoon, there's always a lecture on philosophy and religion, and we have prominent people here to speak. For example, in the summer, there is always a prominent Jewish rabbi that comes and speaks for an entire week. Well-established Islamic scholars have been here. Karen Armstrong, who is the author of many books relating to various religious themes, has been here as a theology in residence for an entire summer. The program goes on for 9 full weeks through the summer.
So, George, do you engage in interfaith worship there?
Well, we don't have interfaith worship. That's one reason why I'm here, is to find ways to add that to the experience here. And we're going to have an interfaith worship on July 29th. There's going to be an interfaith worship service that I'm going to hold in the Disciples' House. So that will be occurring this summer for the first time. They've had a lot of interfaith dialogue, but they really haven't had actual interfaith worship.
Right. Which religions will be included in that, do you know?
Well, I will try to attract as many people as possible from various traditions. Unfortunately, I don't actually know of people from various traditions that I can call. For example, in Muncie, Indiana, I have a lot of friends that are from the Hindu tradition, Muslim tradition, Baha'i, and so forth, and I can just sort of pick up the phone and call them and arrange for them to participate. Here I can't quite do that, but there is a paper which advertises all the religious activities, and the former director of the Department of Religion is going to attend. So I'm hoping we'll get enough publicity out so that we'll have quite a various group that will be at the service.
What have you learned from your experience of leading interfaith worship in Muncie that's going to help you there?
Well, I guess what I've learned is that it's of great benefit to have people participate, read from their own tradition, give short interpretations of the scriptures that they read from their own tradition. We always begin each service with the lighting of a candle from each tradition to honor each religious tradition in the world. And then we move into a short purification ceremony. Often we have a water purification ceremony where people simply interact with water in a way that would be appropriate or comfortable to their own tradition. And generally everybody can do that because water is such a universal symbol. Then I will have picked a theme that the service will be organized around prior to the service, and we'll have picked scriptures from the various traditions for people to read that relate to that theme, and those will be read, and then a short dialogue and commentary will take place where we talk about that particular common theme and the insights we gain from it when we hear the theme spoken of from the perspective of a religious tradition other than our own. One thing that's in my particular view regarding interfaith worship, and in the view that is held in the seminary that I attended in New York City, is that we're not really supposed to create a new denomination or a new church or anything of that nature. We're more interested in having people gain a positive experience of interfaith worship, so that within a community that may be diverse, we have a way of bringing people together, say once a month, to have a meaningful interfaith experience.
Yeah, isn't it? I mean, it's often worship is described as the devotional expression of a particular religious tradition. And so do you think that, and often a criticism that comes of interfaith worship is that it's simply a watered down activity in which you're just simply seeking the vaguest commonalities, and that no one can really bring their own faith fully present into a worship service? How would you respond to that sort of criticism?
Well, when we choose a theme that people can interpret and dialogue on, the person from representing a particular faith that is interpreting and reading the scripture from their tradition, they can represent their viewpoint as deeply as they would like. There is certainly no restrictions on that. The enlightening part of that experience is that very often when you hear that commentary from another religious tradition on a theme that you know is present in your own tradition, you gain, first of all, an awareness of the depth of a person's understanding from their tradition, and that often gives you new perspectives and new insights into your own perspective on your own tradition. So the result is really an enlightening experience where one feels they have touched their own tradition more deeply, rather than one of superficially watering down.
Right. Yeah, that's
experience.
There's my experience in Muncie, of course, with interfaith worship was through the National Day of Prayer, in which we were bringing people together, and we had a Christian gentleman, William Keller, who expressed this fear that Christians would be compromising their faith or have to sacrifice their faith in order to come together to listen to the prayers, as he said, to other gods. But what I've always found, my experience has always been that people who come into interfaith worship end up deepening their own faith.
Right.
Sometimes there are Christians who are sort of wandering and vague and unsure about their Christian commitment, and when they start to listen to these other faiths, they begin to understand their own Christian faith much better, and they begin to realize the elements, perhaps of Hinduism or Islam, that they don't embrace, and they realize they don't embrace them because of their grounding in their Christian tradition. It's the same thing with Hindus and Muslims. Gandhi was famous for telling people not to convert to Hinduism who loved his commitment to peace and justice work. He said, just go practice your own faith, become a better Muslim, become a better Buddhist, become a better Christian. That in that encounter, what we find are the universal elements of our faith. We begin to see those universal elements, but we also begin to claim the particularities of our own faith with a more humility, instead of them being absolute in the only ways that
right.
one can approach truth.
Just as an example, I was interviewing Faz Rahman, who was from the Islamic tradition, and he began talking about the 5 pillars of Islam. And as he did that, it occurred to me that almost every one of those pillars is really in every religion. They just don't call them pillars, and they exercise the practice of each of those pillars in different ways, unique ways. And actually, I've found that when you listen to, for example, how fasting is a part of Islam, or giving of alms or saying prayers throughout the day and so forth, I begin to look at my own practice and think, perhaps I can learn from that particular expression and integrate some of those ideas into my own practice from a Christian background.
Yeah, I remember I was talking to a Muslim once. We were talking about prayer, and he was critiquing what I was saying, and he said, you're using you're thinking of prayer so much as just something in your head, as words and ideas in your head. The Muslim is taught from the religious practice that prayer is of the entire self. We put our entire bodies down on the ground, and it's the submission of your entire life, not just, what words are you thinking, not what words you use, and not just what ideas. And that was something that sort of transformed my understanding of what I was doing religiously, that it was a way of life.
Yeah, and that brings to mind a passage that is from one of Paul's epistles in the Christian tradition, and that is the line which says, the phrase which reads, "Pray without ceasing."
Yeah.
And I think
what
you just described there in terms of the way the Muslim views prayer could help a Christian gain insight into what is meant by Paul's phrase or expression, "Pray without ceasing."
Yeah.
That's just an example of how we can reflect differently on our own tradition as a result of being exposed to another perspective.
And then, of course, the other thing that happens in worship is that instead of seeing someone from another religion as a set of ideas or, just theology or theological statements, we begin to see people in other religions as faithful people. We begin to see the qualities of their trust, the qualities of their hope, the qualities of goodness in them, and we begin to gain a deeper respect for religions that we may never embrace on our own, but we begin to see that the goodness, we begin to trust them more, understand them more deeply.
I guess another spin-off of the interfaith experience in terms of worship is simply the fellowship that results before and after the service too. Conversations become deepened. You begin to know a person more deeply. We always ask in the service if there's people have any concerns about their own life and so forth, and we find out that people have the same hopes and joys regarding their families and the concerns regarding their lives that everybody does. All those cross religious boundaries, and pretty soon you gain an experience of friendship on a level that transcends the boundaries of faith.
Yeah, in my tradition, we always say that far more important than the sermon is the coffee hour. It's the time when people are engaged together.
I know that would certainly be true with my sermons.
Yes. The hope of interfaith worship is that a spirit of community, spirit of unity, which is claimed and upheld by all religions. All religions speak of this sort of universal quality of togetherness that comes in the worship and becomes planted in the spirits and the minds, in the practices of all the people who come together.
I think we're being confronted with a particular challenge today because in previous ages we haven't had the situation where you had such diversity, religious diversity within a community, and so it was much easier in the past to get people together, although they still had trouble doing it. Now we have much more diverse communities throughout the United States, and so we just need to deal with the issues that presents us, and we need to do it in a way that embraces the greater spirit which we all believe in worship, which some people call God, some people call Allah, some people call Brahman, and so forth. That particular challenge is an extremely important one, I think, in the United States at this time.
Thank you for listening to Converging Streams, Interfaith Fellowship in Our Modern World. Our program is a production of the Muncie Interfaith Fellowship, with content and financial support from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Muncie and technical support from radio stations WCRD and Work FM. Most importantly, we thank you, our listeners and followers, for your support. To connect with Converging Streams, including listening to our entire catalog of past programs, getting our latest new content, and making your own contribution to this program, visit our website, convergingstreams.org. Converging Streams is produced by Tony Piazza, George Wolfe, and Thomas Perchlik. Thank you for listening and have a pleasant week.